What happens when two of the most powerful women in media go head-to-head in front of millions of viewers? What happens when years of carefully constructed public images come crashing down in a single moment? Today, we're diving into one of the most explosive television moments ever captured, where Oprah Winfrey and Meghan Markle faced off in a way nobody saw coming. This isn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong. This is a masterclass in how quickly things can spiral out of control when truth meets carefully crafted narratives. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what unfolds next. The atmosphere in the View studio was electric. As Oprah Winfrey settled into the guest chair across from the panel of hosts, what was supposed to be a routine promotional appearance for her latest book project was about to become television history. The producers had arranged a surprise guest, someone Oprah hadn't spoken to publicly in months, someone whose very presence would test every ounce of Oprah's legendary composure. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special surprise guest joining us today, announced Joy Behar, her voice carrying that familiar tone that suggested something big was about to happen. Please welcome Meghan Markle. The cameras caught Oprah's reaction in real time. For just a split second, the mask slipped. The woman who had built an empire on emotional intelligence and graceful responses looked genuinely caught off guard. Her smile remained, but her eyes told a different story. Meghan walked onto the stage with that practiced confidence she'd perfected during her royal years. But there was something different about her energy today. She wasn't here for pleasantries. She wasn't here to play nice. As she took her seat, next to Oprah, the tension was immediate and palpable. "Well, this is unexpected," Oprah said, her voice carrying just the slightest edge as she turned to face Meghan directly. "I had no idea you'd be joining us today." "I'm sure you didn't," Meghan replied, her tone perfectly measured but loaded with meaning. "There's quite a lot we haven't discussed, isn't there, Oprah? Quite a lot the public doesn't know about our relationship." The View hosts exchanged glances. This wasn't going according to any script they'd seen. Whoopi Goldberg leaned forward slightly, sensing the shift in energy. "Ladies, why don't we start with something light? Oprah, you were telling us about your new book project." But Meghan wasn't about to let the moment pass. "Actually, I think we should address the elephant in the room. Our last interview together painted a very specific picture, didn't it, Oprah? A picture that you helped create, a narrative that you helped shape. But narratives can be dangerous things when they're built on selective truths. Oprah's legendary composure was being tested in ways she hadn't experienced in decades of television. Meghan, I'm not sure what you're implying, but every question I asked you was fair, and every answer you gave was your own truth." "My truth," Meghan repeated, her voice taking on a sharper edge. "That's an interesting phrase, isn't it? Because the thing about truth is that it's supposed to be absolute. It's supposed to be the same for everyone. But somehow, when it comes to my story, my truth seems to be the only version that matters." The studio audience was dead silent. You could feel the energy shifting as viewers realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. This wasn't a friendly chat between two women who'd worked together before. This was something much more complex and potentially explosive. "I gave you the platform," Oprah said, her voice still controlled but carrying more weight now. "I gave you the opportunity to tell your story without interruption, without judgment. I supported you when you needed support. You gave me the platform." Meghan agreed, "but you also shaped how that platform was used. You asked the questions that would get the responses you wanted. You created the moments that would generate the headlines you needed. Don't pretend this was just journalistic integrity, Oprah. This was television." The accusation hung in the air like a challenge. Oprah Winfrey, the woman who had made a career out of authentic conversations and emotional breakthroughs, was being accused of manipulation by someone who had trusted her with their most vulnerable moments. "I have never," Oprah said, her voice rising slightly for the first time, "manipulated anyone's story for television. Every person who sits across from me gets to speak their truth in their own way." "Their truth," Meghan shot back, "or the version of their truth that makes for good television. Because let's be honest about what that interview was really about. It wasn't about healing or understanding or even justice. It was about ratings. It was about creating a moment that would be talked about for years." The View hosts were struggling. To regain control of what was supposed to be their show, Sarah N. attempted to jump in. "Ladies, perhaps we can take a step back and know," Meghan interrupted, her focus entirely on Oprah now. I think it's time we had this conversation publicly. I think it's time people understood what really happens when you sit across from Oprah Winfrey. The preparation, the coaching, the careful construction of moments that feel spontaneous but are anything but. Oprah's eyes flashed with something that looked like genuine anger. You're suggesting that I coached you, that I told you what to say during our interview. I'm suggesting that you're not the neutral party you pretend to be. I'm suggesting that you have an agenda, just like everyone else in this business. The difference is that you've built your brand on being above all that, on being the person who just wants to help people tell their stories. And you don't think that's what I did for you? I think you saw an opportunity, Meghan said, her voice steady but relentless. I think you saw a chance to be at the center of the biggest royal scandal in decades. I think you saw ratings and relevance, and you took it. The accusation was devastating in its simplicity. Oprah Winfrey, the queen of authentic conversation, was being accused of opportunism by someone who had trusted her with their most personal struggles. The weight of the moment was crushing. The silence that followed was deafening. The woman who had spent decades perfecting the art of the comeback was genuinely speechless for what felt like an eternity. You want to talk about opportunism, Oprah finally said, her voice dropping to a level that somehow felt more dangerous than shouting. Let's talk about opportunism, Meghan. Let's talk about someone who married into the most famous family in the world and then spent years complaining about the very institution that gave her global recognition. The attack was swift and surgical. Meghan's composure flickered for just a moment before she regained her footing. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You're doing it right now. You're twisting my words, my experiences, my pain into something that fits your narrative. Your pain. Oprah's voice carried a note of skepticism that cut through the studio like a blade. The pain of living in palaces, the pain of having your wedding watched by 2 billion people, the pain of being handed a platform that most people could only dream of. The pain of being isolated, of being silenced, of being told that my mental health didn't matter as long as the institution looked good. Meghan fired back. But you already know all of this, Oprah. You heard every word I said. You saw me break down, you saw me struggle, and you turned it into entertainment. Whoopi Goldberg made another attempt to moderate. Ladies, I think we're getting a bit heated here. Maybe we should know, Whoopi, Oprah said, not taking her eyes off Meghan. I want to hear this. I want to understand what Meghan is really saying, because it sounds like she's suggesting that I exploited her vulnerability for my own gain. I'm not suggesting it, Meghan replied, her voice crystal clear. I'm saying it outright. You took the most difficult period of my life and you packaged it into a television event. You marketed my trauma. The accusation hit like a physical blow. Oprah's carefully constructed public persona was being dismantled piece by someone who had once trusted her completely. The woman who had built her career on being the safe harbor for people in crisis was being portrayed as a predator. I have spent my entire career giving people a voice, Oprah said, her voice shaking with barely controlled emotion. I have given people platforms to speak their truth when no one else would listen. I have championed the voiceless and the marginalized, and you've built an empire doing it, Meghan shot back. You've made millions of dollars off other people's pain. You've turned suffering into entertainment and called it empowerment. That's not fair, isn't it? How much money did that interview make you, Oprah? How much did your network profit? From my breakdown, how much did you personally gain from the most difficult moment of my life? The questions were relentless, each one hitting harder than the last. Oprah was being forced to confront the uncomfortable reality that her success had, in many ways, been built on other people's struggles. You came to me, Oprah said, her voice stronger now. You reached out. You wanted to tell your story. I didn't force you to do anything. I came to you because I believed in what you represented. I believed in the Oprah brand. I believed that you were different, that you actually cared about the people who trusted you with their stories. I do care, do you? Or do you care about the ratings they bring you? Do you care about the headlines they generate? Do you care about the cultural conversations they start? Meghan's questions were cutting to the heart of something that Oprah had probably never been forced to examine so directly. The business of empathy, the monetization of vulnerability, the thin line between helping and exploiting. You're being incredibly unfair, Oprah said, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. You're painting me as some kind of vulture when all I did was give you a platform to speak. A platform that you controlled. A platform that you directed. A platform that you used to create the exact story you wanted to tell. What story did I want to tell? The story that would make American audiences feel superior and protective. The story that would generate the most emotional response. The analysis was devastating because it rang true. Oprah had crafted the interview in a way that would resonate with American sensibilities, that would position Meghan as the underdog. Against an ancient and cold institution, you're suggesting that I manipulated you into saying things you didn't mean. I'm suggesting that you knew exactly what questions to ask to get the responses you wanted. I'm suggesting that you were never the neutral party you pretended to be. You had an agenda from the moment I walked into that garden. My agenda was to let you tell your story. Your agenda was to create television history. Your agenda was to be at the center of the biggest royal scandal in decades. Your agenda was to remind everyone that Oprah Winfrey is still the queen of the interview. The words hung in the air like an indictment. Oprah's face went through another series of micro-expressions as she processed the full weight of what Meghan was saying. You're angry, Oprah said finally. You're angry about how things turned out after our interview. You're angry about the backlash, about the criticism, about the way people responded to your story. I'm angry about being used. I'm angry about being turned into a product. I'm angry about trusting someone who I thought understood what it meant to be vulnerable on television. And now you're taking that anger out on me. Now I'm telling the truth about what really happened. Now I'm showing people what it's really like to be an Oprah guest. Now I'm pulling back the curtain on the most successful exploitation machine. In television history, the attack was so direct, so personal, that it seemed to physically stagger. Oprah, the woman who had weathered decades of criticism and controversy, looked genuinely hurt by the accusation. Exploitation machine. Oprah's voice was barely above a whisper. Is that really what you think I am? I think you're a brilliant businesswoman who figured out how to make money off human suffering and convinced everyone, including yourself, that you were doing it for noble reasons. The condemnation was complete. Meghan had systematically dismantled Oprah's entire professional identity, reducing her life's work to a cynical business model designed to profit from pain. The silence that followed was unlike anything that had ever been captured on daytime television. Oprah sat motionless, her hands folded in her lap, her face a mask of controlled devastation. For the first time in her legendary career, she looked genuinely defeated. You know what the real tragedy is? Oprah said finally, her voice so quiet that the studio microphones had to strain to pick it up. The real tragedy is that you actually believe what you're saying. You've convinced yourself that I'm the villain in your story, because it's easier than accepting responsibility for your own choices. Meghan's eyes flashed with renewed fire. My choices. My choice to trust you. My choice to believe that you were different from every other television personality who saw me as a commodity. Your choice to leave your family. Your choice to burn bridges. Your choice to wage war against an institution that you knew you couldn't defeat. The words hit like a slap. Oprah was finally fighting back, and she was aiming for the most vulnerable parts of Meghan's narrative. You don't know what you're talking about, Meghan said, but her voice carried less conviction now. Don't I? I've been doing this for 40 years, Meghan. I've sat across from thousands of people who were convinced that everyone else was the problem. I've listened to countless stories about how the world failed someone who refused to adapt to reality. So now you're comparing me to your other guests. Now I'm just another delusional person who couldn't handle the truth. I'm saying that you came to me with a story that painted you as the victim of circumstances beyond your control. I'm saying that you wanted the world to see you as the innocent party in a complex situation. And I'm saying that I gave you exactly what you asked for. The accusation was subtle but devastating. Oprah was suggesting that Meghan had been an active participant in crafting her own narrative, that she had been just as calculating as anyone else in the process. You gave me what you thought would make good television, Meghan countered. You gave me the questions that would produce the most dramatic responses. You gave me the platform to destroy my relationships with my family because you knew it would be compelling viewing. I gave you the opportunity to tell your truth, whatever that truth was, if that truth was destructive, if that truth hurt people, if that truth had consequences you weren't prepared for. That's not my responsibility. It is your responsibility when you know the power of your platform. It is your responsibility when you know that every word spoken in that chair will be dissected and analyzed and weaponized by millions of people. And it's your responsibility to consider those consequences before you speak. It's your responsibility to think about the impact of your words on the people you claim to love. The exchange was becoming more personal with each volley. Both women were now fighting for something deeper than just their public reputations. They were fighting for their sense of self, for their understanding of their own moral compass. "You're trying to make me responsible for your choices," Meghan said, her voice rising. "You're trying to make me responsible for trusting you with my story. I'm trying to make you responsible for your own actions. I'm trying to make you see that you can't blame everyone else for the consequences of your decisions. My decision to trust you was a mistake. My decision to believe that you were different was naive. My decision to think that you actually cared about anything other than your own success was foolish. And your decision to come on this show today and attack me publicly is what exactly is this you taking responsibility? Is this you owning your choices?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Meghan's face went through a series of expressions as she realized that Oprah had turned the tables on her completely. "This is me telling the truth about what happened. This is me showing people who you really are. This is you trying to rewrite history because you don't like how your story ended. This is you trying to blame me for choices that were entirely your own. I trusted you, and I honored that trust. I gave you a platform. I asked you fair questions. I let you speak without interruption. I supported you when you needed support. You exploited me. I empowered you. I gave you a voice when you felt voiceless. I gave you an audience when you felt unheard. I gave you the opportunity to change the narrative about your life. You used me. I helped you. And the fact that you can't see the difference, the fact that you've turned gratitude into resentment, says everything about who you really are." The final accusation was brutal in its simplicity. Oprah had managed to flip the entire conversation, positioning herself as the wounded party and Meghan as the ungrateful beneficiary of her generosity. "Who I really am." Meghan's voice was shaking now. "Who I really am is someone who is broken, down by an institution that values image over humanity. Who I really am is someone who reached out for help and got turned into a television spectacle instead. Who you really are is someone who wanted the benefits of royal life without the responsibilities. Who you really are is someone who expected the world to change for you instead of finding a way to work within the system. The system was broken. The system was ancient and complicated and imperfect, but it was also the system that gave you everything you claimed to want, the system that made you a global figure, the system that gave you a platform to make change, the system that nearly destroyed me, the system that you destroyed yourself fighting against, the system that you could have worked within if you had been willing to be patient, to be strategic, to be humble." The word hung in the air like a final judgment. Humble. The suggestion that Meghan's entire struggle had been born from an inability to accept her place in a larger structure. "Humble," Meghan repeated, her voice carrying a note of disbelief. "I should have been humble while being torn apart by the press. I should have been humble while being isolated from my support systems. I should have been humble while my mental health was being ignored. You should have been smart. You should have been strategic. You should have understood that change takes time and that burning everything down wasn't going to help anyone. And you should have been honest. You should have been transparent about what that interview was really about. You should have told me that you were more interested in television history than in helping me heal. I was interested in both. I wanted to help you tell your story, and I wanted to create compelling television. Those two things don't have to be mutually exclusive. They were for me. They were when my story became your product. They were when my pain became your profit." The final exchange encapsulated everything that had been building throughout the confrontation. To women with fundamentally different perspectives on power, responsibility, and the nature of truth itself. Oprah looked directly into the camera, her composure finally returning. Sometimes the truth is uncomfortable. Sometimes it challenges our assumptions about ourselves and about the people we trusted. Sometimes it forces us to confront the difference between what we wanted to happen and what actually happened. The statement was delivered with all the authority of her decades in television, but it also carried the weight of someone who had been genuinely hurt by the accusations leveled against her. Meghan sat in stunned silence, realizing that despite All her preparation, despite all her accusations, Oprah had managed to have the last word. The woman who had built her career on controlling narratives had just been outmaneuvered by the master of the medium. The cameras captured the moment perfectly. Two of the most powerful women in media sitting just feet apart, having exposed the fundamental differences in how they viewed truth, responsibility, and the nature of their relationship with the public. What started as a surprise confrontation had become something much deeper, a meditation on power, vulnerability, and the price of fame. A reminder that even the most carefully constructed public personas can crumble when faced with the right pressure at the right moment. The silence stretched on, neither woman willing to break it first, both understanding that whatever happened next would define not just this moment, but how their entire relationship would be remembered by history. This was television at its most raw, most honest, and most devastating. This was what happened when two masters of media manipulation finally turned their skills on each other. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more explosive celebrity confrontations and drop a comment below. What do you think really happened between Oprah and Meghan? Was this a long time coming, or was someone playing a deeper game than we realized?